It's that way.
I can't see it open.
Let me just close it. Let me just open this one.
Does it say
Oh man, you know what? It's dragged to that side. It's still on that side there.
Oh, you've done it.
Right. So we need
Okay, I'm gonna do one more thing, and then. Okay. Now all of a sudden doesn't like us anymore. It was definitely on that. Okay, so I'm sorry, we're gonna have to. I think just have to try and do it like that.
That's fine.
So last time I'm gonna check, and then I'm gonna.
We just need to get your presentation up again, and then we're good to go.
My presentation?
No, well, your cover. I'm the only guy who brought a presentation here. It's all my fault. So it's just. There we go. Now we're officially.
Hey!
Well done.
Does yours go
Who
back
knows?
to
I don't
small?
care.
You know what I want you to do? You take this first page and put it into these.
Okay, but we're trying to get too fancy now, hey? They're about to start.
We need to start.
Okay, which microphone do you use?
Just sit on the mic, please.
So, are we using the laptop? Because I was told if I press something disappears. I'm going to use the laptop. And I close it. If I press buttons, you forgive me.
Okay. And ma'am, that's your mic, okay?
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. If I could just have your attention so that we can start with our proceedings for this morning. Or I can be parliamentary and say, please can I have order in the House? Thank you. Good morning, Sanbonani, bonjour, bon dia, and. I will be your program director for this morning's proceedings. And before I actually get into the proceedings, I must say I was very excited when I was requested to be program director. For those that don't know me, this is like fish swimming in water. Love speaking. So I was like, not a problem. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Imagine my excitement when I drove. And there's the army, and there's the police, and there's a red carpet, and there's a guard of honor. I thought, wow, I've arrived. This is me. ATNS has really outdone themselves. And I started walking slowly onto the red carpet. You know, you got to position yourself. You've got the heels. And I was abruptly moved aside. No, ma'am, this is not for you. I'm like, do you know who I am? I'm the program director. They're like, yeah, that's okay. Over there to that obscure little corner. Nonetheless, I'm still very, very thrilled to be here. I think when I was just going through the program, the exhibitors, the stands, just the general profile of the people that are here today, it's actually amazing. From an aviation perspective, from what we're trying to do as an industry on the regional integration, it really, really is a pleasure and an honor to be surrounded by the subject matter experts that are here. So let me firstly acknowledge the following. I have to be a proper program director, but I'm not going to do it in the political way. The ATNS CEO, Mr. Tabani Mtiani, will give his opening address shortly. I'd like to acknowledge the exhibitors. I see there's a number of stands around here, and I understand that some of the exhibitions are going to be quite interesting. I'd like to acknowledge the presenters from the various organizations and the institutions of higher learning. I understand we don't call them universities anymore, so I've got to be politically correct. Of course, I'd like to acknowledge the air navigation service providers that are here, fellow aviators, friends of aviation, and members of the media. So today, I present me to you, the program director for the 2016 AVI Afrique Expo. It's a very, very beautiful name, Afrique. My name is Fundisa Tebe, and I promise to keep it short and simple. I was speaking to my mom last night, just getting some pointers, and she says, my child, remember, you're not the presenter, this is not your summit, you are just supposed to just do a couple of remarks, and that's it. I said, oh. So I'm going to keep it very, very simple. But mine is a very, very simple task. I think the real thought-provoking items and the real provoking discussions are going to take place throughout the next couple of days. And I really, really would challenge you that the deliberations that happen from around here just don't end up as that, as deliberations. The theme of aviation innovation for regional integration in Africa, contributing towards economic infrastructure development and social cohesion, for me is a very, very huge theme. It has got huge implications and it puts a huge challenge on many of us. But before we even start on the challenges, I really think that we need to take some time to acknowledge each one of us sitting here in terms of what we have done for the aviation industry, what we have done for aviation in Africa. Yes, there's still much to be done, but I don't think we should take that away. And this positions us beautifully to ensure that we continue to make sure that Africa plays a pivotal role in the global aviation stage. So that is my first challenge to each and every one of you. Today, as you go through the exhibitions, as you have the presentations on safety, and I mean, the array of discussions is absolutely amazing and it's absolutely wide. But I really would challenge each and every single one of you to say, going forward from here, what are we going to implement? What are we going to action? And it mustn't be just another talk shop. So, the presentations, I understand, are going to be taking place concurrently as some of the exhibitions. You'll see that in many instances, some of the presentations are going to be repeated. And I guess part of the reason for that is to also make sure that everybody gets a good balance from an exhibition perspective, but also gets the in-depth understanding from the presentation. So the exhibition stands on this side, and the presentations will take place concurrently. I also think I need to really acknowledge ATNS for hosting such a profound platform like this. This is the 5th year, and it is definitely growing bigger and bigger. And I think even just from the topics that have been set, that the bar is getting set higher and higher. And of course, as I was preparing for this, I just had to just take a step back and just acknowledge just the power that ATNS is in the global stage. I sent a text to the CEO, because I remember when we were in Montreal during ICAO, he said something that was quite profound, and I never really quite realized it. He said that ATNS commands or directs the airspace from obviously all of South Africa, up north to the DRC, east halfway to Brazil, west, no, sorry, the other one, and I'm a pilot, believe it or not. East, halfway towards Australia, west, halfway towards Brazil, and all the way to the South Pole. 10% of that is being done by ATNS. I mean, that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. We never, ever take into cognizance just how huge that is. So my normal day job is I work for Airports Company South Africa. And we've got this joke that we command respect because we operate 9 airports in South Africa and a couple of others. And we always have this joke that, you know, you may not necessarily take off from an Airports Company South Africa airport, but you will land at an Airports Company South Africa airport or vice versa. But in this case, ATNS is there. ATNS is there, left, right, top, down. That is an absolutely amazing feat. And I really, truly hope that from a regional integration that we see ATNS really commanding a lot more space. And next time I'm hoping I'm going to say more than halfway, and I'm going to say Australia and Brazil and. And so here's my second challenge to all of you sitting here today as you go through the exhibitions, as you go through the presentations, and as you listen. And something that's personally very close to my heart. I say that my day job is working for Airports Company South Africa. My holiday job It's not a job. My holiday hobby is I fly light aircraft out of Lanseria, so I have made a mental note that because there is no financial remuneration for this job, my landing fees shall be given to me at a discount for a few years outside of Lanseria. But my night job is I'm a member of the Southern African Women in Aviation and Aerospace, an NGO, which is quite passionate about making sure that the youth, and specifically women, are aware of opportunities within aviation. And I always do this automatically when I'm at an aviation event. I just take a scan around the room and I just look at the demographics. I look at the kind of representation that we've got. And I'm glad to see that we've got lots of women, but I still do think that as an industry, we have a very, very long way to go. So here's my second challenge. I know we've spoken about innovation, social integration, regional integration, social cohesion. I really would like us to make sure that we make this industry an even more exciting and an even more inclusive industry. And what it is our responsibility going forward to ensure that we get the utmost participation from women and from the youth. I'm not saying that people here aren't young, but I'm just saying that the reality is many of us found ourselves in aviation by luck. That's the reality. I don't think many of us thought when we were young, I want to do this. So I really pose a second challenge that as we speak about this very, very robust challenge and a very big and audacious discussion for the summit, that we really start to speak about making sure that we integrate the youth and women as a whole. So, without further ado, I would like to give the opportunity for the CEO of this dynamic organization to just come and say his opening address. Like I said, my mother reminded me that this is not your expo, it's his expo. So before I give the floor to him, I just would really just like to highlight just a few things about Mr. Thabani Tiani. What I do know, having spent some time with him over a few occasions, is that he is the deputy chair of CANZO, which is once again an amazing feat because that is once again putting South Africa, putting Africa on the international aviation stage. It's absolutely, absolutely huge and it's absolutely critical. He holds a BE Engineering, Mechanical Engineering, Bachelor of Honors, and but a very, very, very prestigious Mechanical Engineering degree from the University of Pretoria. I know that he mentioned that he used to work at Eskom for a number of years, and he also holds a World Executive MBA through the George Washington University. He's the current CEO of ATNS, and as I said, he's the deputy chair of CANZO. Thabani has over 10 years experience in aviation, specializing in air traffic management. And as I've mentioned, he's an engineer by profession, having worked at Eskom, Transnet Ports Authority, and NERSA. He's a registered professional engineer, so when I've got things that are broken, he'll be the first person I call to ask how my stereo gets fixed or how something gets painted, etc. Because for me, engineers are engineers. And he's a member of the Air Services Licensing Council. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Tiani. I understand that we're going to do 2 presentations and we're not going to do a question and answer section. And I guess I urge everybody to make sure that throughout the day, you have an opportunity to have a chat with the 2 speakers that are going to come now. You have an opportunity to ask them questions, opportunity to engage them, but it just won't be now this morning. Thank you.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Fundi. I'm sure you do not doubt that she is a pilot, a captain, or a first officer, depending on which seat you are sitting on any day. Distinguished guests, thanks for that good welcome. It gives me a great pleasure to 2016 AVI-Africa Innovation Summit and Expo. I've been complaining to some of my colleagues here and friends that we only meet once a year. I don't know how that happens. But the aviation industry is such a small clique that we're supposed to be meeting quite often. But I saw Prof. Maharaj, I don't know where you are right now. I haven't seen him for the past 12 months. The last time I saw him was here again. And a number of people that I haven't seen for the past 12 months. But it's good to see you. Especially welcome to Dr. Glenn Sneeden, who's here with us today, a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society, excuse me, the current president of the Aeronautical Society of South Africa, and an extraordinary lecturer at the University of Pretoria. I'm happy to be an alumni of the same university, Dr. Sneeden. In a short while, Dr. Sneeden will be delivering a paper which is titled Why Technical Innovation is Not Enough for African Aerospace to Flourish. The ATNS AVI-Africa Innovation Summit is growing and growing very fast to become one of the most notable and not to be missed aviation calendar events in any year. This year, it's our 5th year since the summit's inception in 2012, and I'm happy that we also have Ms. Liago Takalani here, the CEO of Lubone, who's actually the founder of the summit when she was still with us in ATNS. We have also introduced a third event, namely the Airport Collaborative Decision Making Conference. ACDM is a concept that aims to improve air traffic flow and capacity management at airports by reducing delays, improving the predictability of operations, and optimizing utilization of resources. ACDM offers substantial benefits to all partners by improving the quality of information on which decisions are made, leading to the enhancement of operational efficiency and facilitation of optimum use of available capacity. This conference, yesterday we had the CDM conference, of which some of you attended it, which was, I believe, was very, very successful. And the 2016 ATNS AVI-Africa Innovation Summit Expo forms an integral part of the AVI-Africa conference for a very good reason, that we do not believe in talking about innovation only. Doing innovation has to be an outcome. And it is primarily a showcase for those who are turning great ideas into commercial reality. This expo is a great opportunity for us to connect with those who are walking the talk by turning ideas into reality. This expo aims to provide access to all players within the innovation ecosystem, the inventors themselves, of course, but also the service providers, regulators, academic institutions, and consultants who all play a role in helping move from prototype to commercially viable product or services. The flash of insight that gives back to an innovation is that everybody thinks about, and of course it is vital, but it's also too easy to forget just how long and painstaking is the process to turn that insight into something that keeps the plane in the air or its passengers more comfortable hour after hour. I urge you to attend and listen carefully to presentations that will be delivered today. Our presenters and those from our various stakeholders will be looking at innovative solutions which are critical to the development of future aviation safety systems, amongst others. These solutions are not only looking at systems that are more efficient and effective and sustainable, but also provide the industry with solutions to the challenges we face today. Throughout these insightful presentations, they will share their experiences in applying innovative concepts, approaches, and technologies with the express goal of enhancing aviation safety in all aspects. Hopefully, this expo will not only help people to understand the full spectrum of activity and cooperation that lies behind successful innovation. It will also help all of us and all of you to make the connections that are so important in creating an aviation industry that turns innovation into reality. A special thank you to all who are participating in this expo, and I hope it will fulfill its role in taking innovation in aviation forward. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me, and it also gives me a great pleasure to declare the 2016 ATNS Ave Afrique Innovation Summit Expo open. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO, for that opening and official welcome. Now, it gives me great honor to now introduce, and as I was typing on my iPad, you know this autocorrect, Dr. Glenn Snowden. And I was like, no, not Edward Snowden, we're here, ATNS. So Dr. Glenn Snowden, who's worked for, and I had to regurgitate this a few times, he's worked in the field of gas turbine research for the past 20 years. And for me, the very, very interesting and exciting part, as part of the CSIR's Aeronautical Systems Competency. I don't know what that means, but where there's aeronautical, I have the utmost respect, because some of the minds that are there, some of the things that we are doing in South Africa are absolutely amazing. During this time, he has worked with engines, lovely, and engine manufacturers from 5 different companies, ranging from the Eastern Bloc to the USA on military engine life improvement analysis and experiments. He's led the South African involvement in 2 large collaborations with the EU called the Vital and Future, which deal with the high bypass, engine efficiency, and fan blade flutter, respectively. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying. I'm trying to be as eloquent as I can be, because I'm still trying to just regurgitate it in my mind here. In addition, he has been a test engineer in South Africa's Trisonic and Wind Tunnel, the largest facility of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere. He's now leading a small team of engineers and a network of universities and SMME collaborators in the quest to develop small gas turbine engines of interest to the market as well as international OEMs. He's got a variety of tertiary education qualifications, and his latest being a PhD that he obtained from Durham University in the UK 2012. He is a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society and an executive secretary of the International Society, gotta take a breath, for air-breathing engines, as well as the current president of the Aeronautical Society of South Africa and a lecturer at the University of Pretoria. Dr. Snedden, the floor is yours.
Yes, as Tabani said, I'm an extraordinary lecturer, which, in case you're wondering, means I don't get paid. So, if you want to be extraordinary, don't get paid. So, I was asked to give a morning session lecture, and I put my mind to what would be interesting to you and what I could talk about. And you will realize that I'm a bit of a propeller head. So I am going to talk to you about engineering things, which are probably a little bit outside of your field, but I'll try and relate them back to the ATNS field. First of all, let me just get a little plug in here for the Aeronautical Society of South Africa. The Royal Aeronautical Society, to whom we are affiliated, is 150 years old today. Not today, this year. So we predate flying in fixed-wing aircraft, which is why there's a balloon on my tire, I guess. But the second oldest aeronautical society in the world is a South African one, and we started in 1911. And I want to invite you all to join this elite society. It's elite because we only invite people in the field of aviation. So anyone in the field of aviation is welcome to join. And we ourselves hold an annual conference, and we've just finished that actually 2 weeks ago. So it's very nice to see other conferences in action. And I will certainly be interested to see what goes on later. So I'm going to just run you through a couple of examples of why technical innovation isn't enough. And by technical, I mean in engineering innovation. It doesn't always help to have the best, greatest, fanciest piece of engineering on the table. Then I'm going to have a quick look at why aviation is a good investment. And then I'm going to look at a project, an engineering project, which is being put forward for the future. And hopefully one that you will see as a great challenge to your industry and something to support. Now, I grew up reading books, Biggles, Reach for the Sky, books about men with no legs who climbed into Spitfires and fought in the Battle of Britain. And my first example comes from there. The Spitfire versus the Hurricane. Now, some of the younger members here probably don't even know what a Hurricane is, but most people will probably know what a Spitfire is. And when you see pictures of Spitfires, you'll see them shooting down Messerschmitt aircraft. So I'm sorry if you're German, but this is an English perspective. And if you see pictures of Hurricanes, then you'll normally see them burning and being shot down by Messerschmitts. So what makes a Spitfire so special? It has this beautiful elliptical wing, and it really is a personification of grace and power. The Merlin engine combined with the airframe, and it really was the preferred machine of the few during the Battle of Britain. And if you've ever heard one take off, well, it is something special. It came from an interesting heritage. It was Reginald Mitchell's last design. He died of cancer shortly after the first aircraft flew. And it was born out of seaplane technology that won the Schneider Cup, Schneider Trophy. Doesn't really bear much resemblance to the Spitfire, does it? The only thing it actually shares in common is the engine. The engine, the Rolls-Royce Merlin, was actually developed for that aircraft. The Hurricane, it's a bit like the dumpy old lady. But the man who built it was actually someone quite special if you look at what he achieved in his lifetime. So his first aircraft was that Hurricane. His last was the Harrier jump jet, which is quite something. So let's look at the elements of the aircraft that could be seen as innovations. That elliptical wing. Aerodynamically superior, but practically very difficult to produce. Forced the guns to be distributed throughout the wing, which meant it wasn't a good gun platform for shooting down aircraft. And it forced the undercarriage to be tucked up in the fuselage, which made it terrible on rough runways. So bad that the Russians didn't even really want them. And if you look at the later versions, this is the Mark 21 Spitfire, the elliptical wing is almost there, but not. It's been modified. And in the bottom corner there, that's actually something called the Supermarine Spiteful. It's what Supermarine put forward as the next generation Spitfire. And you'll notice that the wing and the undercarriage are completely different. So they fixed all the problems that the Spitfire had. So the elliptical wing is not it. I had to put up one picture of an engine, seeing as I am an engine guy. And For those of you that drove here in your BMW 325, you should feel quite small now, because that's a 27-litre supercharged engine. The first version flying in a Spitfire put out just over 1,000 horsepower. By the end of the war, the Spitfires were flying on Griffin engines, 37-litre V12s, putting out over 2,000 horsepower into that same airframe. But the same engine in both the Hurricane and the Spitfire. So what was the real innovation? At the top there you have the Messerschmitt aircraft that they flew against. In the middle you have the Hurricane, at the bottom you have the Spitfire. The first two had constant section wing spars. And the Spitfire, I've tried to illustrate it there, had a telescoping wing spar, which made it the first optimal design structurally to go into an aircraft. So where did that innovation come from? Well, you've seen it all before. It's on the leaf spring of every single truck you've ever seen, so it's not even that much of an innovation. It's just a crossover from different fields. And the real kicker, 7 out of 10, if you ask Google, 7 out of 10 German aircraft were destroyed by the Hurricane, not by the Spitfire. So perceptions are very important. The Spitfire was a magical aircraft. It went on to continue in service until 1955. The Hurricane went out of production in 1945. So a great success for the Supermarine Company. In perception of everyone, the winner of the Battle of Britain, but in reality not. The second example is much closer to home. And I've just put up a few words there that for me probably summarize what everyone thought about the Rooivalk when it first went into service. We only built 12 of them, only 10 production items. It was an utter sales failure, a huge drain on the SA Treasury. But now it's the darling of everyone's eyes. It's the African peacekeeper. And the only difference is a coat of paint. It's a wonderful innovation, an outright failure in terms of sales, but in terms of peacekeeping in Africa, in the DRC in particular, it is absolutely the machine for the job. And now we are talking about Rooivalk 2, whereas for the last 15 years we've been talking about what a failure the Rooivalk has been. So let's talk about a case for aerospace and why do countries work in aerospace. So let's look at a couple of government strategy documents. In 2004 I was part of writing something called the Assegai document, and what we included in there was an embryo-like model where we should build a small airliner, and frankly we were laughed at. It's been done before. But if you look at the embryo model, it calls for the government and for local airlines to buy the production of a company producing airlines for no better reason other than to get the airline started. The aircraft started into airline service. And that's a big investment. The aerospace SDP document also, well, not formally published, as is the case with another document I'll refer to, but it is available. That was published in 2011. And what that document said was some obvious things. Aerospace is a high growth sector. Last night we heard that the current growth rates are about 5.4% for passenger seat miles in Africa. It's a high growth industry. There was huge potential to move into aerospace manufacturing for South Africa because the high-cost countries controlled 97% of airspace manufacturing in 2008, and we had the opportunity to get into that market before China. Also, a number of the airliners would be replaced early because of environmental effects. So that means that there's a huge market for new airliners. And some of the key technologies there, you'll see departments like DST already acting on, composites and nanotechnology. So those things are already finding their way into government research financing. Sorry, this is a lot of little writing, but essentially what this says is that airspace is an industry technology generator. So if you build an aircraft, then the technology will spread far wider than just aerospace. And there's another little line in there that says that if you invest R1, or if you were Swedish and you invested R1 in the Gripen program as a government, then you would have actually gotten 2.6 Rand back into the industry via a variety of sources. And that's quite a good investment for a government. And the other thing that says is that it's a technical university. It's a place where skills are generated that cannot be generated anywhere else, and that they spill out into the greater industry. And what they concluded was two sets of things. The first was that they'd establish a joint steering committee, which has been done. They would declare aerospace a national priority. I'm not entirely sure that they've done that. That they would establish international partnerships and cooperation frameworks, and you can see a lot of that in what government are doing. They would establish an SA aerospace cluster, which is still a work in progress. They'd implement aerospace skills development plans, still a work in progress. And that they would review the performance. That's what government does. The second one was that they would establish a flagship program. And they have done that. But first, before I get there, I just want to talk about a similar study, similar to that one that was done on the Gripen, which is a lot closer to home. So just a little aside. And that was a study done on the Rooivalk, subsequent to it being painted white. So the first thing was that there was a list of some fairly important companies that was created as part of the Rooivalk study, or at least if they weren't created, they were reinforced and given renewed life. Some of those have been sold. Those are marked in red. Thales probably always was an international company. So, the Rooivalk study said we had spent 6.2 billion Rand on Rooivalk. But if you look at what came back as part of that program, in all the companies and all the projects that we've done subsequently, we got 24.8 billion Rand back in projects into this country. So that multiplier in South Africa is not 2.6, it's 6. So that's a good case for investment in African aerospace. And something none of those studies even considered was African aerospace itself. Most of them looked at the market in Europe, the market in Asia, the market in South America. Seat miles are growing in Africa, according to this study, 5.1. Later information might even be higher. It employs an enormous 70 million people at the moment, and we can certainly expand that. And the vast majority of the jobs are down here, and they're not in the engineering field. They're in airport services. So it can really be a major employer in South Africa and Africa. So what is the flagship project that I was talking about? And this is it. Now these slides come from Willy van der Walt at Denel, I must acknowledge him. And this is a project to put a small regional aircraft, fully certified and available to expand the network of aviation in South Africa and Africa. And why do I start by saying that technology or technical innovation is not necessary? Well, it isn't. And I'm proud to say that we have not done something that we've done before in South Africa, which is get too involved. This is not PBMR. We're not doing highly detailed, fancy engineering. this is a very simple, straightforward, pressurized aircraft for passengers. It's about time to market. So, the challenge will be to make it FAR 25 certified. It will be one of the first of its kind to carry 24 passengers and to be certified to do this. Its prime mission would be to travel 800 kilometers carrying those 24 passengers. But it would be able to fly over the thunderstorms, giving passengers comfort and speed, and to operate from smaller unprepared strips if necessary. So, without boring you with too many details, a very simple design based on NASA publications from the 1980s. No major innovation, but 4 abreast seating in a nicely optimized cabin. With options, combi, cargo and passenger options. No one believed that this was possible and so, or affordable, so they did commission an independent study, and it is probably one of the most viable projects I've ever seen. So I would love to see someone with an MBA take a good look at this, Tabani. This is your field. Engineers tend to look at the technical feasibility and the technical innovation, but actually this aircraft has massive business potential as well. And right from the beginning it has been seen not as just an engineering project. It has been developed for social benefits for South Africa, to develop the industry and to develop the people. And those people who said we cannot do this, it's just too much, too far out of our reach. So there are slides prepared to counter that argument. We've done many things in South Africa, starting in 1911 with the Aeronautical Society. John Weston, who was the founder of the Aeronautical Society, flew his own aircraft. And when he couldn't fly it in South Africa because he couldn't get an engine, he took it to France and put an engine on it there and flew it. So he was actually the first South African to fly. Not in South Africa. But all the way to the modern day, we have RLAC flying, we have our own male UAV, and why not build a small airline? And we have a tradition of excellent contribution to world aerospace. And today we have Denel and we have Paramount and we have Aerosud, we have the Safran Group, all supplying parts directly to major aircraft suppliers. And we have a whole framework of suppliers below that supply into that network. And we have a whole tier of research and development below that can support it. So why not? And just one example, we as part of the A400M project at Denel, our colleagues at Denel, actually designed and built probably the most complex part of the aircraft, the wing box. So there is no reason why we need to detract from our abilities and say that we cannot do this. We can. And this is where we start to look at the benefits and where the innovations need to come from outside of engineering. We have a huge number of small airfields throughout South Africa, and we have even more up through Africa. And this is a way to create a feeder airline system for those big aviation hubs. So the jobs will come at these small airfields distributed throughout Africa. So really for me, this project is a complete no-brainer. So to end off, Sarah can work. There is no reason technically why it cannot work. It has been designed such that technical innovation is not necessary. When we started out looking at this project, there were all sorts of calls from the Department of Science and Technology. Let's look at having a windowless airframe with cameras on the outside and giving them screens that look like windows. all of those things have been rejected. It's just a silly little example. It's a very simple, straightforward airframe. But what is important is to get this airframe into the market. And it will only work if the entire system accepts it. There has to be local airlines to buy it, and there has to be local air traffic management to manage its movement in and out of the larger airfields, never mind from the smaller fields, to make it safe. And it really is time to be proudly African and to put our weight behind such a project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Snowden. So I've learned something today. A century of South African aerospace, who would have ever thought? And I guess I say thank you for enlightening us. I thank you, I guess, for your time that you'll be spending enlightening others. But furthermore, linked to the challenges I posed earlier on to everyone, I'm asking, what is it that we're tangibly going to do to make sure that we take aerospace out into the world as a whole? We've done some remarkable things in South Africa. We've got the Royal Falk. What are we going to do in the South African space to educate our own, to create, to expose our own? And what are we going to do to ensure that the rest of Africa gets the same exposure? So thank you for that. And I was listening to you speaking about wings and engines, and it took me back. So one of the subjects that we do as part of the PPL exams is ATG, Aircraft Technical in General. Now, I'm a chick. Engines, wings, it's a tough one. And I remember I was on the verge of failing ATG. And they were asking piston engines, turbine engines, how does it work? I just want to fly the plane. How the engine works. And so my saving grace is, I remember my instructor told me, how does an engine work? Compression, combustion wasn't quite coming to me. And I'll never forget, and I still remember it till this very day. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. That's how I remember. That's how an engine works. So as you were saying this, I remembered it. It took me back, and that's how I still remember it to this very day. And so that brings our morning's program to an end. I think I've done a sterling job, thank you, as a Master of Ceremonies. I'll invite myself back next year. And I will insist, divas having all these demands. I'm going to insist on my red carpet and my guard of honor and some men in uniform, but we'll take that offline. Thank you very much to the CEO of ATNS once again for truly bringing a remarkable expo and summit like this, for just bringing some of the world's, and I'm going to say the world's greatest minds around here, because that's what we are, that's what we play in the world space. Yes, it's about Africa, but at the end of the day, it's about taking our rightful place in the global aviation space. And I've been told that as you're all sitting here, you're on TV. So I must just be announcing that this event has been streamed live on YouTube and on the AVI Afrique website. I think that's very exciting. In fact, I saw some of the clips from last year's summit. So if you're aware of that, I'm not sure if there's live tweeting, if there's a Twitter handle as well. There is, and like I said, I know some of you, I'm not sure what I'm talking about when I talk about Twitter handle, but it's okay, we'll take that offline. Just that so that you're aware. I think we're going to go into a tea break. We are running ahead of schedule a little bit, but I understand that we will reconvene at 10:30, 10:45 for the presentations. But please start walking around, looking at some of the exhibitions and having those very, very insightful discussions and next points, plan actions and implementation. And for me, who's now promoted herself to Program Director for 2017, I thank you and I say goodbye.